test cases. And if those reasons exist in your organization, I'm certainly not saying don't do it. But I would say, be careful of the level of detail. I mean, I think logical test cases like the ones that we just saw, no problem. That's something that people ought to be able to review, right? Even non-testers, not necessarily onerous. Though again, if there's not a compelling reason, then people are going to probably be a little irked being asked to review it. You get down to things like very detailed, concrete test cases. I think then you're going to have somewhat of a difficult time justifying that and getting people to be involved in that. So I'd say be careful with this one, Tony. Logical test cases like the ones that you saw in this presentation, I think if there's a reason, then fine. Have people review them and perhaps approve them if that's the culture in your company. But detailed test cases probably not, unless again there's just some sort of overwhelmingly compelling reason why you need to do that. And definitely, I would say, personally, focus on getting people outside of the test team involved in reviewing the what to test more than the how to test. And if that is confusing to you, I'd refer you to the RBCS library page, the articles that talk about risk-based testing, particularly the case study of implementing risk-based testing at Computer Associates. That give you a really good feel for what that process looks like. Okay, Vin asks, how can we use case testing to help with smart regression testing? That's actually a really interesting question. I got something like that via email prior to this, so I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, it kind of relates to acceptance testing too. Use cases are really good for acceptance testing because if they pass based on the use cases, the system is able to deliver the values that it's supposed to be able to deliver. And then for regression testing, I think saying that you're going to cover the use cases, there has to be at least one test per typical workflow and at least one test per exception workflow. I think that's an excellent coverage criteria for automated regression tests if you're trying to do that. If you can get to 100% use case coverage in your automated regression test, the system test level, then you really should have a very high degree of confidence that the system is working properly and delivering valuable things that it's supposed to deliver. So I think if you're looking at putting a regression test suite in place, use cases could be a very helpful part of how you do that automated regression test suite. We're working with a client right now that they take kind of use cases. They're not it's rigorously documented as what I showed you, but they're a form of use case which they then use a tool called RSpec, and then based on that, that's translated into some automated Selenium test cases, and I think that's a really good practice. So I would say definitely, Vin, think about use cases as a powerful tool for you in terms of targeting your regression testing. A comment here from Christina saying, I'm in the digital libraries, no database issue for me, so it sounds like it's back up. Again, as I said, sometimes you get transient glitches with that MySQL database, yeah, usually it's just like try again in a couple minutes and it clears up. But if you do run into problems with that and they're sort of reproducible, you're seeing them often and frequently, or they become reproducible for some period of time, I would always appreciate emails from people saying, hey, I had this problem with the website. Well, we do test the website thoroughly every time we do a new major update to it. It's always possible for things to go wrong on the server side, and we can always use the help to determine if that's happened. Let's see. So I got a question from Robert here. If you know that the developers are using a tool like NUnit for their testing, how would you change your testing processes? Well, so let's expand that to say if we know that the developers are doing good unit testing in general, whether using whatever unit testing frameworks they're using, but they've got some sort of automated unit testing framework that they're using, and it's bundled into some continuous integration system like Hudson or Cruise Control or something like that, and then they, those tests get run automatically. I think this actually has can have a fairly profound impact on your testing, because if that sort of thing is happening, then for one thing, you can assume that there's a lower level of bugs. So likelihood, when you're doing your risk analysis, again to go back to risk-based testing, and you're doing your risk analysis, likelihood of bugs goes down across the board. And what that means, or what that very well could mean, is that the amount of coverage required, the amount of testing coverage required to reach the same level of confidence is going to be significantly less. So instead of developing 10 test cases to cover a particular test condition, you might say, I'm perfectly happy to develop one or two. So obviously that's got a great deal of efficiency gains. Now I think also when you know that there's really good unit testing being done, I think that creates an opportunity for us to focus more on kind of this coarse-grained use case type of testing, and business logic testing, and less on like field by field input validation possibly, and less fine-grained, because good unit tests, and they do need to be good. I mean, it's not like anybody can test, as we know, right? But assuming that there is good unit testing happening, that's going to comb out a lot of the sort of fine-grained issues that we might otherwise find. So really, at that point, what we're talking about, what kind of bugs are likely to remain? What's the role? Well, end-to-end type of stuff, right? Where you do something in one part of the system and that results in something happening in another part of the system. You got to verify that those proper things have occurred. That's really sort of that becomes the primary function. So, I think this is really great that we start to see more and more organizations where this does happen, that's like I'm working with a client just now where they've got this great system. You go in and these Hudson systems set up, and they're creating their tests in various frameworks depending on which language they're using, and that all gets checked in, and tests get run automatically as part of continuous integration. And now they're going to go to the next step, and they're going to hook up their Selenium user interface system tests, system regression tests into that, and that's all going to get fired off automatically. And this really does profoundly change the nature of the testing job, because it becomes much less about chasing down a ton of bugs, right? And it becomes more of a risk mitigation and confidence building exercise. And